Okay, while you're getting your coffee and sitting down, sort of outline what we're going to cover this morning. We're going to go through the report. I would hope everyone has had an opportunity to read it. And we'll go through it. I think there's at least one item we didn't vote on, which is the special event fee section. We want to make sure, we're going to go through everything, so anybody has questions. I want to make sure we spend time on the AFO section, which was really written over the weekend. And we spent a fair amount of time just talking about because of the vote on the general obligation bonds, how we want to work that, and make sure everybody's comfortable with how we did that. So those are the three sort of highlighted things that we do in the report. Since this is our last meeting, I was telling everybody how fast this has gone. Maybe it's because it's more time for me, but it really seems like it's flown by. The first thing I want to do is thank everyone.
Hey, did you see this?
In the 4 years, it's been better every year. And that's people have been more engaged, but never as engaged as all of you were this year in the discussions. Doing your prep work, I think we've learned every year in getting the information out earlier to you and getting rid of paper as best we could. So you've done a great job, and I want to thank you. It's certainly for me, I enjoy this. I've enjoyed very much the relationships I've developed over the years and the talent that is within the county in the room, and your ability to leave everything outside the room except common sense and a practical approach to the issues that we have to face. It's good not to have to run for office. You can do that more easily. The second thing I want to do is, over the weekend, we met, there was a group of us, and I want to thank them, that met, I guess, for about 4 hours on Saturday to wordsmith this together. And we used all the technology that Raul could put together. We had actually people that couldn't be there that were calling in. We had everything up on the screen so people could see it. We probably spent about an hour plus on the first 3 pages, or whatever it was, on the introduction and on that executive summary part. And then subsequent to that meeting, there were numerous updated edits, comments that went from individuals on that team back to Raul and then back out to the group, so we weren't getting overloaded. And so the first person to thank is Raul. When we met at 8 o'clock, because he's amazing. When we met at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning, we really had a report in front of us. Now, we made lots of changes, but we had a base that really allowed us to do our work. I'm just amazed at how we can type so quickly and get all that stuff during the meetings that take place, because he's really our history, and for people who want to watch the tape or read things, he does a terrific job in doing that. So, and I can't tell you, I don't know how many drafts we've done all through actually yesterday. So I don't leave anybody, but the group that we had, and like this group here, the group that works on the wordsmithing is I consider a diverse group in terms of different aspects of who they are and where they come from, and I have no idea where their parties are, but I think it's pretty diverse. And they add a tremendous amount of value and difference in opinions. Barbara Lawson, Ellen Giles, Josh Zucker, who can't be here today, he's down at DC working, Dr. Clinch, Steve Poignant, Steve Hunt, and Drew Clark. And Drew actually was up in Pittsburgh watching his son play lacrosse that day in the snow. Drew's an amazing editor. So we had a lot of, I found Ellen Giles, as she called me to explain to me, I want to apologize, but I am an editor. And Barbara, we just had, it's a great group of people, and they were respectful of each other. There was differences of views. And that's what got to the report that you have today. Moving forward, after today's meeting, on Monday at 2:45, Steve Poignant and I are going to meet with the county executive, and he will receive whatever changes we make today, minor changes to everything, whatever we do. He'll get a copy of that, as will you. You'll have revision or whatever changes are made today, and we'll meet with him for about an hour. On next Thursday, I think it is, on the first, Thursday the 1st at 9:30, Steve and I will meet with the county executive and the press, and they will have that. And from that point on, I've already asked one person today, but there's I had a note out to a smaller group, and if there's people that you think we should meet with, in terms of, one of the biggest challenges for this report to be effective is getting people to actually read it. And I think it's the best report, I would say, as long as they don't need reports. It's a really good report that articulates in a fair way what we're seeing and what we're telling the county and the politicians and everyone else that they should be thinking about. So we set up just to get an idea of what we're looking at and have you think of other places you think members of this committee in groups or individually should be able to talk to people. We're going to meet with Leadership Howard County. They have a thing called This Just In. It's a morning meeting that Bob Jeffrey drives, and Bob will serve the boards with him. He's talked to Stacy. They're going to set up that meeting for us. Holly's going to try squeeze me in for 5 or 10 minutes when we do Leadership Howard County for their class this year on Government Day. I think it's Government Day or local Government Day. Milk is arranging a May 3rd meeting for CA. I'm talking with Leonardo about the chamber, doing something with them in a variety of different ways. We're going to approach the Sun editorial board and just share it with them, and it's up to them if they want to meet with us in a small group where they can just ask questions. We have someone going to approach the League of Women Voters to give them information so as they're talking to candidates, they can be looking for types of information and issues. Howard County Concerned Citizens. I had the pleasure of doing that last year. And it was actually, I thought, went well. With Stu Cohn, we'll approach him. It was Steve, you or I. I want Alan to talk to Mike at the superintendent of schools and have a one-on-one after Mike's had a chance to read the report so he can question us. And Christina, we'd like to figure out how to get to the Board of Education. We tried to do that last year, but to the board and me privately or publicly with, I assume publicly with them. I'm going to approach the Farm Bureau. Because in Western Howard County, that's an important, and certainly last year, relative to the Agricultural Preservation Fund, they put a block into it down in Annapolis when I think Weinstein and the county executive were looking for ways to reallocate some of that. Bloggers, I have got that with you and Josh to reach out to bloggers. And then we're going to have certain people in the group at their thing write some op-eds as we move into it. So as we get response, to be able to just, provide some background basis as needed. Bruce, I'd like you to deal with getting us in front of the home builders. Okay. Allison's going to try to get us in front of the realtors. And I don't know if they're still doing, but I'm going to talk to Atlanta a bit, or if they're still doing podcasts.
They are.
So I'm going to talk to Atlanta and see if that's something. So the idea is that we can be strategic in just communicating, not convincing anybody, just sharing and being able, when people read things, they're going to read it differently than we sometimes meant things, but to answer questions and to be able to respond. And so as we complete the review today, and you have questions or things that you're not quite sure, please feel free to come back and ask it so we can talk about it and make sure that you're comfortable with being able to respond to the issues. Okay, so with that in mind, let's sort of walk through the report, and starting with the executive summary. If there's any comments or just questions, I just want to run through this and make sure everybody has a chance to. We also, and I actually, some of the people in the county, which was really early on when I was here this morning, is saying that one, I think, personally, I think this report is really good. It's been hammered over. But I think it's certainly, last year was a stronger tone than the previous 2 years. This year is an appropriately some stronger language, but not divisive language, just language to try to prod people to actually think. So, page 1 or page 2? Yes, Jim.
So under the summary of recommendations, and in line 3 in particular, we talk about these revenue projections of 3.4% and 3.6% annually. And it does pull from page 7, but my concern is that, we talked a great deal in here about uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that uncertainty, we've basically reduced the forecasts and projections that we were looking at for this year. I'm just a little concerned that these numbers are a little bit too rosy, or that we're not caveating them enough, so that to the extent that there are significant changes or changes in the economy over the next couple of years, these 3.4, 3.6 figures here could really be different. And I mean, Holly's done a fabulous job of putting together a 10-year projection. But, having worked with 10-year projections before, I know a one-year budget is more challenging. Putting together a longer-term projection and putting a degree of credibility behind it or reliability behind it is challenging.
Jim, I was going to bring up when Steve was listing the things, that's actually something that the committee never voted on.
Yeah.
We talked about that on Saturday. I think I brought that up a couple times. We never voted on what we wanted to put in here although the projection is that we want to put in a statement that said they should focus on slightly lower projections going forward.
Let me just comment, because I think we'll get that, because I read it, I know we're going to get a question on that. And by the way, questions are good. I mean, it actually, because that's the discussion, is the questions. What I think the committee did, and from my perspective, is they focused, as we're supposed to really focus, on year 1. And what we're really saying is, look, there's uncertainty out here in a bunch of things, and because of that, we're reducing that recommendation. When you get the out years, that only becomes important, and maybe when you say it next year and the year after, as you get closer to the reality of it. All we can do, because I think to reduce this based on, we have data that says this is what it is. We can't change what the data says. We've changed the recommendation in year 1 based on things that we feel are uncertain in the near term and longer term world. This is something we got to look at next year. Now maybe we need to add some language that reflects that in there.
Yeah, I agree. And also I just related to that. Number 1, I just looked at the executive order itself one more time, which is on page 2. So the committee is tasked primarily to really look at FY19 budget and the debt ceiling. One is really future years, more like the anticipated effect of the committee's budget recommendation on future budgets, and also evaluate the county's, evaluate the county's projection about multi-year on that. It doesn't say you have to get settled on numbers for futures. Plus, as someone mentioned, Jim and others mentioned earlier, probably multi-year projections, these are all preliminary and primarily to show a trend rather than accurate number. It's going to be updated when we actually come to the year based on all other changed factors. And then the budget at that point will be developed based on updated information. This is more to show a trend and general uncertainty or other issues.
But we're saying develop future year budget
So I think
based on
we probably
multi-year
should,
revenue.
yeah, we probably should change that.
Yes.
That language.
You know, page 7 kind of underscores my concern here, because that very, very first sentence, we basically say that the model suggests, the model indicates that we will likely grow to 3.4 to 3.6%. That idea of indicates or will likely really concerns me. Particularly since what we're kind of saying is this is really just a one-year blip and don't really worry about the out years.
So what I'm hearing is, and I think we can come up with some language, is that we need to hedge that language.
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and we need to do that on page 2 and page 7.
Yep.
And we'll do that, and we'll get that back out, but that's a good comment.
Thank you.
And I, clearly, if you read that, you see, that's a question that'll come, which I think you can be prepared for, but you may as well answer part of it.
Sure.
Because we'll still get the question.
Yeah.
See, the only thing is because this one is one of the board recommendations, he said, shouldn't we try to find an appropriate sentence, at least for K2, and get people to vote rather than later send back the whole report to people?
No, I think we'll get the language today,
Okay, then send back.
and we'll send it back, but it's basically gonna be, we're gonna assume there's not anything, I don't want to wordsmith that language, okay? We got the context.
But to Steve's point, what we need to vote on, so what's the language going to be? I mean, I think
If it is a recommendation, we do have to vote.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering, like, be aware in future years that we may be overly optimistic, or can we start with be aware or something of that?
I agree.
What I was thinking when we were talking about it was, and I didn't think we could have the conversation, just a subset of us on Saturday, which was something to the effect that although the county's modeling shows this, the committee recommends that the county develop budgets based on a
More
more
conservative
conservative basis of, and put a number in there.
Yeah, we need
2%,
to-
2.5%, something like that, just so that we say, we understand what the numbers say, but look at what the number was 3.2 last year and it ended up being less, so
Yeah.
that's the way I had it.
And we're doing the same thing for this upcoming year because the numbers to what we recommended in
And that's why we said a
175.
reduced
So-
projection.
So it would be consistent.
So we would be, if I pick up on part of this, although the county's model shows that the committee, shows this, the committee advises that the county develop its future year, well, it's multi-year.
We want multi-year,
It's
we want
multi-year.
to remind them to do.
We don't do multi-year budgets.
Can't do it one year.
Well, we do multi-year projections.
Projections.
Projections. That's what they are doing, because that multi-year projection is what shows the gap, and it has still the same variance.
They're not gonna redo, I don't think the county's gonna redo the projections, I'm just saying, what we wanna say, what I think we wanna say as a committee is, although their projections show this, we think future budgets should be based on
More conservative.
long-term run rates.
Yeah, on that very point, yeah, I think we need to say, because of the increasing uncertainties in the economy.
Yes.
Yeah, we can put language in, exactly. I just think it needs to be a lower number than 3.4 to 3.6.
I just want to get it.
We will get, I think we got a good shot on that.
Yeah, I mean, we have enough language that
We'll
I
get-
could
we'll
vote
get
on
that
something,
hammered.
but I
We'll get
thought
hammered.
you shouldn't vote on it without having some.
I think this morning.
Well, but if you put it out in front, that while the projections that we have in here, because we have nothing else, okay, shows this, we're nevertheless recommending based on all the other indicators.
Because of the uncertainty.
The uncertainty, which is the point we're trying to hammer
But
home.
what's the number we wanna put in?
I don't know, but it has to be up front. Otherwise people read on page 7 and this makes no sense.
Well, you can still go lower on that page as was said earlier, yeah.
Does it have to have a number?
I don't know that it needs to have a number.
Just more, we can just say more conservative. I think that's okay. I don't think we have to say that we absolutely think that over the 4 years it's gonna look like this.
We
We
could
just
say it just
think
needs
it
to be
needs
more
to be more
conservative
conservative
than
than
this
what's
run
on
rate.
page 7.
Well, develop a budget that
Then we
is
don't
more
have to-
conservative.
But then that's us trying to, we're not running a projection, right? We did the 175 based on what we saw from last year and what we're seeing from this year,
Yeah.
future
I can
long-term
live
5-year
with
run
more.
rates.
I can live with more
The
conservative.
only thing we're saying
Who knows
is
what's
that
gonna
it's going to be less than.
We think it could be less than.
Yeah.
Seems to
And
be.
I'm fine with the numbers. One of the things I was thinking about was just caveating that by saying, but recognize that significant uncertainties in the federal and state economies that could reduce these projections. I mean, again, it's just really caveating the fact that we can't rely on revenue growth at this rate over the next several years.
We could probably have that thought on page 7, where we talk about the anticipated effect of future budgets.
It is not clear enough on page 2.
But yeah, it needs to be on
But
page.
it needs to be upfront.
That's
If
the
we're gonna
exact-
differ
Some
from
people are
what
gonna
the
stop reading this
backup
document on
said.
That's right.
But in action, Steve, when we meet with the press, we're not going to go through this, we're going to go right to the actual, skip to the actual recommendations. So,
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
when this is,
We'll come up with language afterwards that will be, believe me, any language that we come up with is beat with a name. Sledgehammer, I should say. Okay. Any other comments?
Do we need verbs in front of these other recommendations? I mean, you know, it says transfer tax, so are we just going to leave it as, it could be increased, decreased? I mean, do we need verbs in front of these?
I think, I almost leave it the way they are, because when you go into the report, we have the specifics. And if you start, you're gonna start moving into doing the specific recommendation here, is once you start, I think when you start putting action verbs, and then we'd be completely redundant and say, why'd you put, we put it here because we want people to know what's in the report, and hopefully have them read the report.
You could,
review impact, that is a big hat code.
since the other things, recommendations are actually recommendations, and then it says other, it could say, other recommendations address the following topics. And then when you go to those topics, then you're there and you,
That works.
okay?
Thank you, editor. Okay, page 3.
For the sake of clarity, some places we, in here, we say income tax, and other places we say personal income tax. I recommend we just be consistent and say personal income tax.
Okay?
I couldn't hear that.
Now, what Milt was saying, in some places, we say income tax, and the other places we say personal income tax, and he's just saying
Just
be
be
consistent
consistent.
throughout. So, Raul's got that. Raul's already made the corrections that you guys are talking about. Yes.
This may have been made as well too, but the second paragraph, the very end of that first sentence, it says federal and state economic and policies. I don't know whether that should be
Economics.
economic policies or economy end policies.
I submitted that.
Got missed.
It's on the second paragraph.
First line,
Yeah, give it time. But I did.
Oh, the first sentence, I thought you said last sentence.
you know, first sentence, end of the first sentence.
Got it.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
I think it should be economy, or
Yeah.
economic, economic policies. I think
I would say conditions and policies.
Economic
that's-
conditions.
Economic and conditions and
No.
The
economic.
federal and state economic conditions and policies.
Perfect.
That's fine.
Okay, so we would add,
Add a word condition.
okay? We're adding conditions, we're adding conditions. Okay, next,
Page 4,
page 4.
this comes off of legislation.
When someone says next page, I'm
Where are we? See it?
Yeah, I already got it.
No, she said page 4.
Yeah, correct number.
Did you have a correction?
I just gave it to him, take the S off of legislation. Legislation is a plural word.
Oh, there it
Already,
is.
yeah.
By the way, if there's some words like a typo or several, feel free to mark up and give us the after meeting so I can. Yeah, yes.
Weldon's got a lot of your hats.
Just one here too, the first line on page 4 starts with development, but it talks about multifamily housing drawing lower income and higher generating on average. I'm
That's
not
right.
sure what that generating should be.
It was higher need. I'm pretty sure. It was about lower income, but higher need,
Yep.
as I recall.
Yep.
So
I would
it's
say
just- it just got
utilization, not
lost.
need.
Lower income and higher need on
Higher
average.
demands.
Higher
Demand or
demand.
Higher
utilization?
demands.
Thank
And
you.
that related to elderly, changing demands, and also people in the school system. Those were two. I guess I read demands.
I thought it was around
Or charging.
that you had
Lower income and generating.
larger housing,
No, I think it's,
larger units.
no, not large units, actually they're smaller, that's. the-
Smaller,
the
it's
smaller
lower
units.
units.
Right,
Higher
smaller
demand.
units,
No,
but higher numbers of people in them.
It's a higher yield.
It's higher
Higher
yield.
yield.
Or,
It was about demands though,
okay.
but you're right, it would be a higher yield.
So we're using generating higher demand.
Demands. Okay? We're doing well, guys, believe me, you weren't there Saturday, we're doing really well. Yes, Christine?
The fifth bullet, if you look at the bullets preceding, they all have a colon and a verb. So collaboration and communications with other partners does not read the same way as the other four.
Okay.
Unless you made it all,
Yeah.
unless
Right,
you
you
made it all
can choose,
bold.
one or the other, you know.
And
Well,
I
it
think
should be bolded.
I think it's all bold, because that's an important
Yep.
part of the,
Yeah, we just need the bowl all the way to
Yeah.
public.
Yeah, I think that
Colon
they're
is
just,
there.
I think the bolding was just missed.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, that was a statement. I think it's in there.
Reverend wants you to help him with the sermons. Okay, any other on page 4? Page 5.
First paragraph, sixth line down, you've got a colon that actually precedes need, that actually should go
Yep.
back to spectrum, so you've got to.
Yep, fixed it.
Got it, thank you.
Yep.
Page 6. Let's pay specific attention to item 2, because we spent a lot of time on that language. Yes, Jim?
Specifically with respect to item 2, and this is a little more substantive than the colon, but back in the appendix, we do talk about bond ratings and the importance of preserving the bond ratings of the county, but we don't mention it all in here, and I think it's probably a good place to insert that language as well too, and so I just recommended putting something in here like, preserving bond rating to protect the ability to borrow at most favorable terms, which allows relatively more expenditures to be directed to resident services and not debt service. So I mean, something to this effect in here, I think it's
You didn't say
important.
preserve twice in that sentence, did you?
I might have.
Yes.
That's the only thing I meant. So can you put that language without preserve twice?
Sure.
And
Give it to Raul.
yeah, and just, Dr. Cruz is right behind you. Okay. Okay, page 7. Do we need to modify the language and make it seem more simple?
Yes.
No, I'm good.
What would you say?
Yeah, well, whatever changes we make.
Same language,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
similar to
Page
page 2. Okay. Okay, the next one,
Can I
yes,
go back to 6 for a second? On page 6, under 2, we say the committee held a vote on the GO bond authorization. We don't mention anywhere else in here, do we, on holding a vote? So it would make me wonder, did this mean they didn't vote on the rest of this? They only voted on this one? I think we need to either
Or
be
was there some-
consistent one way or the other.
Or was there something?
We do
to
say
it?
voted under summary, the very first thing, recommendations voted on by
But we
the
don't put
committee.
it in each paragraph.
But we don't put it in each paragraph.
so the question is, should we
Just put the committee recommends.
yeah, the
Yeah.
committee recommends, I think, Christina, we were probably at the time sensitive because this was more of a close vote than what usually happens. And that's why I also want you to look at the language, because there was discussion, Raoul and I remember sort of saying, okay, it's 75, but it was a close vote, and with the exception of one person, it was less than 80. And the group on Saturday felt that once you say less than 80, that's where everybody's going to focus on, and that we have to have, and that wasn't the intent of the language, that it's going to come out in discussion that the group felt there needed to be a considerable reduction. So that's how this language developed that I want you to look at and see, make sure you're comfortable with.
So we should delete from, let's see, it is important to note that the county agency and all the way to the census starts decreasing the debt operation, just delete that from the paragraph.
No, I'm just saying, delete the statement.
Well, we already say up above that the committee recommends 75 million, we don't need
So we
to
don't
say
need
it.
it.
It says, due to these factors, the committee is recommending that for fiscal year 2019, the county authorized 75 million, so we don't need the other 2 cents.
We'll get questions on this, you don't, we'll have to worry. I mean, I'm just thinking I'm just thinking back the first year or two when we went to the council and they were really hitting us, why are we coming off 120 million? And saying where we would be now for the last 2 years, we're borrowing 120 million.
In the same way that, we were talking about giving some substance to this, we're talking about the importance of the rating. Do we actually mention at some point the fact that what we're talking about here is new authorization, and when coupled with all historic authorizations that can come due? I mean, I'm not sure that we any place talk about the fact that 130 is actually what hit this year, as opposed to the 90, as opposed to the 90 that went to 92, that went to whatever, that what is actually being
Is our
issued
recommendation
is not what
75
we're.
because of that? I don't think our recommendation is
Okay.
75 because of that.
Okay, I just thought in terms of explaining, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to keep it at 75, because we know there are prior authorized monies that are going to hit the bond market. I mean, we hit that bond rating at
But that ultimately comes back to debt service.
Okay.
As a percentage of operating, I think if we get too much noise, we'll lose people versus, when they ask the question, that's an appropriate thing to sort of walk through, because that's another recommendation we did. Yes?
Do we want to take on the 120 million in past authorizations and reports directly in this, saying?
No, I think that's like.
No, by saying it was because of the low interest environment and was intended to come down.
You know, my own gut is not to do that because, for a couple of reasons. One is, I think that was a wrong rationalization of it. It'd be like us just spending everything we want on our house because we can get it cheaply now. We still gotta pay for it at some point. And I don't want us to be perceived to be critical of what was done at this point. We dealt with that in year one, and I don't think certain council members would appreciate probably us doing that. It wouldn't be productive.
Especially with 4 of the 5 were there when that decision was made, so I'm sure that would turn into a defense.
Well, they know, but they.
Which it did the first year we
sometimes
dropped it down to
they're
120.
good people, but they have short memories
Yeah.
as to why something was done. And they just, once you do it for 2 years, what I got from the first meeting is that they just thought that's the way we do business.
I do feel what Al mentioned, it is a very relevant topic. It's part of the reason why the authorized level is much lower. Is not only because the revenue, which is a part of the issue of uncertainty, that's obvious, but the other part is because prior early authorization, that's still eating into capacity. That's actually the issue.
We continue to talk about the 120 million every year. Realize authorized by the council still means that we had to do projects as a county, right? Just because we said 120 million should be authorized and the county voted to do it, we still as a county selected to do projects that are requiring us to issue debt. That's what's driving the issue, not some sentence in a document 5 years ago. We just keep talking about it.
But
We
honestly-
authorize bonds by starting projects. Right?
Right.
We don't spend debt and just put it in the bank account. We build schools, we build buildings, we do other things that generate the debt.
And those are the decisions that have to be made at the end.
Those are the decisions that are made when we approve capital budget projects, and that's what's driving these numbers and why we still have unauthorized or unissued authorized.
Which is why we're reducing the numbers.
I'm just saying, we talked about those 2 years, and I'm not trying to tell myself because I was on those committees. What I'm trying to say is, we as a county selected to still do projects.
Yeah.
And we're still building those projects 6 years later.
And what you're saying is, I knew when he was much younger. Okay. We okay? Move to page 7? Which we're on page 7.
We already did page 7 and went back to 6.
Yeah.
No, we didn't we still have to
We
talk
haven't
about
done
that.
it.
We said to do the same thing that was on
We
page
haven't
7.
voted.
Oh, sorry. We did the top of
We
page
haven't
7.
voted on that vote.
We haven't voted on, we talked about it, what we were gonna, I think the last meeting, I talked about what we were gonna do on Saturday in terms of APO, this is what we did. And I would just say a lot, we certainly can put that as, but a lot of time was put into the substance of what we did.
When you say seek county authorization, you mean from local council and the county executive?
No, the state legislature has to give authorization.
So the county doesn't give authorization.
We seek, oh,
this
no,
is
that's
your
for us
study.
to, well,
Right.
yes, but in order to use the study, you have to have authorization already from the state legislature that we can actually apply whatever comes out of that study. Right now, the delegation defines what those allocations are, and what we study doesn't make any difference.
So wait, so you're saying that we cannot,
We cannot change the allocations.
no, I'm not asking about the
Okay.
allocations, because my reading of this is saying, therefore we seek county authorization to oversee the implementation of the study. So we need,
To start.
okay, the county, right, so the county, we're asking the county for the authorization for the study, not the general,
Yeah.
so.
And this study in particular is only to determine the
How to do
implications
projections.
of the
Yeah.
recently passed
Right.
legislation
Yeah.
on
Right.
future
No, it
budget
makes
projections.
sense.
No, it's okay.
All we're saying is we can't do our job unless we know
Right.
what we're looking at.
And the
You
county.
bring up a good point, though, because we've had this conversation before. We reference county in here kind of all over the place. When we say county in this report, are we referring to all county government, including both, both legislative and the county executive and the agency?
I think
and
it's
the-
include, I think it is, I think the intent is that we're telling the county being,
The whole county, okay.
As defined in the introduction, county means Howard County,
you know,
period.
and this
Unless
is
you want to change it.
public documents, not meant to be exclusive.
That's why it's capital.
So we're asking,
No, it shouldn't
and
be.
it would need to be the legislature that would approve, the council and would need to approve this, right?
No, not this. I'm sorry, I was, just forget.
Authorize.
I landed on
Let's
another plan.
let's go to the end. We don't know, and I think it's really important, we don't know what this report is going to say. And we're not pretending, we're not,
I'm saying, who would approve?
it would be,
The
who would,
county conduct
I
the
think it would be,
comprehensive.
it would be
It'll
the
be the-
executive. It would not have to go to the council.
Maybe or maybe not, they might do it by council resolution. It is possible that they would, to make sure everybody signs off on it, they could go that route with it.
But they're not required to, so that's why it's
They're
more
not
Not
general.
required to, but
That's why it's more general county,
Okay,
it's somewhere or another.
okay.
This is within this room, though it's on film too. My concern personally, if it goes to the council, that it'll get politically involved in trying to frame the study. What we're trying to do, and the reason we wanted this committee, is to have the study be neutral, dealing with objectives and versus being framed as to what you know, how you want the outcome to be.
What do we, I mean, we're recommending that this committee kind of oversee
Yeah.
that study, but we're not going to engage the study, right?
No, we're not gauging it, unless you have some money.
Yeah.
No, but I think the biggest part of the role that we'll play, and we know the people that are in this room to a degree in the county that have the expertise in this, it's to really be involved in getting comfortable with what the RFP is. The scope of the RFP, the depth of the RFP, what it's looking for, and what the outcomes, not the results, but the outcomes in terms of the information that would allow legislators and the executive to understand what the impact of the legislation AFO is, and that doesn't mean to change it, whether it's good or bad. It just means that's what it is, and we have to then build our budgets and build our spending around it.
We never say RFP in here, though.
No.
What's a study?
You're saying that we want the county to authorize this committee to oversee implementation of the study, but that implementation is really the RFP process.
Yes.
So we should say RFP
Yeah.
process. Otherwise, it would say study.
Because we're not going to run the study.
Right, but if we say just study, we're not saying that we had anything to do with what went into the RFP, what we thus asked them to study. So we're not just following something that all of the parameters have been set, and now we're just monitoring this process.
So what we just made that last sentence, do we therefore seek from county authorization to oversee the RFP process related to this purpose study?
Well, I think the RFP is the first part of it, is making sure that an RFP is developed that will provide a neutral analysis. And that's one step. And then the question becomes for the group, whether or not we think we still need, for lack of better terms, to babysit as it moves its way through and they then do their work.
Okay.
I mean, that I think is the discussion. How active do we want to be?
What?
How much oversight do we want?
No, I agree with you. I think,
So,
no, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Isn't this what we did with the
Courthouse.
The P
We didn't create the RFP.
No.
We weren't involved.
we were the,
But we gave a recommendation
We
there.
gave a recommendation. The county, I think it's not up to us to tell the county to come back to us on that. I think there's a high likelihood that they would because it keeps it neutral. But I think we have to start with the RFP because that's the most critical. And in fact, the RFP, as I've thought about it more, I know 3 or 4 people within county government that I want, but there has to be a component from Mike. If you look at what we're saying today, there has to be a component from the school system in there too.
well, I think part of the problem here is the word implementation.
Yes.
Right, that gets it too much in the noise there, so we need to replace that word. I would almost say the development, because that really puts us in a similar position as we were with the P3. Because if you talk about implementing something, and you're saying that we are gonna be in charge of implementing something, I think that's where you get
Well,
yourself
how
in
about if
trouble.
we change it? How about if we
Now,
change
you
it?
gotta take that word
No,
out.
let
and
me,
find
let
another
me
one.
throw something out and then Ellen will fix it. Therefore seek county authorization to oversee the development of the RFP for this critical study as part of our ongoing mission to assess and advise on the fiscal and economic health of the county.
I'm just not sure that we can oversee the development of the RFP. I think we can advise on the RFP, but the RFP processes are defined very
Exactly.
carefully within law as to what needs to be done and which pieces need to be bound. So I think we want to have a role in that to advise in I think advise in the development of the RFP makes more
So I-
sense. And that's clear to people.
Yeah.
We're not trying to take management of the study over.
Well, that's why I said replace implementation with development and call it a day.
But we can't oversee the
But we
RFP.
can
I don't
advise.
think we can
So
advise.
if I change, if so,
Advise in the development.
Advise in the development of the RFP.
how about advise in the delivery and development of this critical study? To advise in the development and delivery, right? We want to be the agent, like with the P3, to make recommendations on it, or not.
Right.
So the language on the table right now is we therefore seek county authorization to advise in the development or on the development and delivery of the RFP for this critical study as part of our ongoing mission to assess and advise the fiscal and economic health of the county.
Do we want the RFP, or do we want to be like the P3 where we were the recommender of it?
I think that was different, I know, because I think it's different in the courthouse. The courthouse is, we were asked to look at the information that came in and give a recommendation. That's very different from this. This is the key on this, it seems to me, is the agreement on what you need to be looking at, okay? That, because that's where the discussion has to come to make sure that that information allows you to make good decisions financially and otherwise.
4 will impact 3. AFO 4 will impact number 3. We need to study to understand what the impact of AFO is going to be in the long run.
Yeah.
Revenues and expenditures for the county. That's why we're recommending the study.
Yeah.
We're not going to, the study's going to go to the county. We're not going to recommend anything from the study.
No,
Well, it's really almost
It's
as
going
if,
to be used to inform their projections going forward.
yes. It's for their good.
Okay, beyond the discussion, are we okay with that language?
Everything's fine. What about the last one that we changed as well, right? Originally, you said we therefore seek.
No, that is
That's what we just
essentially-
modified. That's what we just
hey,
modified.
Steve, you want Raul to take a swipe at this, and we can just take a look at it and see how it's
Sure.
coming together?
Well,
Instead of
yeah,
spending the next 30 minutes
but
arguing over commas, periods, and
no.
exclamation.
I'm more concerned with the content than commas and periods right now. The commas and periods, we can read up in about two, 3 minutes. It's the content. I think we've got the content right now.
Let's just, see what it looks like.
We also need to change the sentence before that as well, too, because it does talk about the committee is uniquely qualified to oversee the implementation of an impartial and comprehensive study. So I think there we also need to say something like uniquely qualified to assist with the development of an impartial and comprehensive study. So both sentences have to be in alignment.
And just reading
I'm
it
wondering
myself, I had no idea
what
what we
we're
were
asking.
doing. I thought we were somehow implementing this stuff.
Everything's become like 4 by 5
Made no sense.
Steve, I'm thinking that the language, we're really seeking
Okay,
an
what
are those
advisory role.
Bingo.
And we're seeking an advisory role, which covers everything that we want to do. We're trying to use different,
In other words, rather than limiting it to
right,
say
therefore
advisory
we
role,
seek
allows
an
us-
advisory role in the development of this
Study, this critical study.
And that, the critical study, however you want, but that's what we're really seeking.
I agree.
Okay, so that makes it, I think, simple in the language.
So you don't want to emphasize RFP, you want to say
An
study.
advisory role, because my trouble with this when I have read it back and forth is really what is our charge? What, we are a volunteer citizens committee that is trying to be impartial and so forth, but we don't really have a legal,
No, it would have to be a charge from the county
right, so
executive.
if they say that, yes, we're going to assign you an advisory role, that gives us the voice that we want.
And in essence,
then we
we're,
should
in
take
essence, we're a
on
steering
executive
committee, which is something I've done a couple of times where we didn't take votes, we really had no real authority. It was almost as if we came together as a group with the people leading the initiative, and they looked at us for a sanity check. It's like, hey, guys, we're going the right way, and we would provide input.
So now let me
So it's
let me get
non-binding.
the weeds a bit. So I got the advised part, but if we're not specific as to in development of the RFP, there's a big hole in there if you leave that too open. The RFP.
You could say an
is the
advisory
driver
role
on
to
this.
include
I mean, you
RFP.
gotta, I think you just have to put that in there, because if you don't leave it in, you don't come back and read it and say that the RFP is the driver.
An advisory role to include and what you want to include. Does that work for people?
Well, how are you doing back there?
Okay.
Can you?
We'll work on it.
Okay.
Just
Do
a
your
minor thing, you
do your
can't
thing.
use soccer, people are gonna think it's soccer. We actually refer to this as the committee, so this is the only place you use it.
Okay. You can imagine how bad it was. I'm sorry because I brought it up. Okay, thank you. This is an important piece.
So do we vote?
Should we vote on it now and be done with it?
Since we
Why don't we
said
let
we were
Raul
gonna
write
vote?
it, read it back
Well,
to
what
us,
I'd like to
and
do
then
is see, that's a good, I'd like us to vote on concept, and then we'll have the language come back out today, okay? So we're agree that the concept is that this committee is requesting to be,
Well, even further, that this committee believes that there should be a study in the first place. So make sure we get
yeah.
past that part
So we have
first.
it, we've said that, it's a study, and then furthermore, we're saying that we think, this is not the words, but we think we're the right people to advise on the development of that process inclusive of the RFP. Okay? So he's got the words, I'm not gonna try to repeat it. Well, yeah, I'd like to see us vote on that concept, and then we'll get the specific language. All in favor?
So moved.
Opposed? Okay, seems unanimous. Any other on page 7?
Two less substantive comments. Under transfer tax, third line down, the first word transaction, I think should be transactions. And then the last paragraph, second sentence, about midpoint, it says, "and the recommended," I think it just should be "and recommended." Or "and recommend" any changes, excuse me.
Where are you on that one, Jim?
Sure. The last one was the last paragraph, second line, that starts with transfer, middle of the sentence, it says, "and the recommend any changes." And
Oh,
it should
got
say,
it.
"and recommend
Yep.
any changes."
Yep.
Good.
Thanks.
Got it.
You know what you remind me of, Jim? I used to report to the Rouse Company, and ran all their risk programs throughout the company, and I meet with senior management. And I look at myself as a variance manager. That's how my mind works, is where are the opportunities where something's out of whack? And I think we would spend hours preparing for this meeting. And George Youngman, who was a controller, they'd get in here and it'd just drive me crazy, because he would pick something up immediately, because his mind was, in terms of what he did, was so much beyond what I was looking at. So, George is your name.
Thank you.
So just one thing, for later editing, that first sentence on the revenue, we need to really work on that. It sounds like we're trying to say a lot before we run out of breath.
Okay.
It's too long.
The committee also agrees that this is about this. The committee has resident to review the current transfer tax structure, which would include revenues distribution. You're right, that's a wrong sentence. We need to break it apart in a couple sentences and say this is what the
Yes.
committee will do.
Yes.
Ralph, it's just taking the same content, it's breaking into two sentences. Yes,
You
sir.
could take that, one of the phrases, say, core services and capital needs will outpace the projected revenue growth, period. Then say, unless there are changes in the current structure. By that way, you're flipping around and laying out the.
Yeah, that's what I'm
You have it, well, make sure you have it, because
started with core services.
Start with the end, and then
The other thing is, any changes to the current revenue structure basically already include the potential new revenue. So I don't know what it is, that's what we add the other.
Yeah, you can actually completely delete that.
That's interesting.
And make sure, Ralph, do you have the,
Yep.
did you get those changed?
Yeah. I'm working on it.
Okay, page 8. We voted on the AMS and EMS, we just look at the final language we came up with. I'm sure you have it.
we are the last county in the world to allow the.
I didn't know that.
That's what we recommended.
Hey, Raul, that was already verified, right?
Well, just,
Yeah.
I said Calvert.
We are the only.
Yes. I just did
Put it in.
Passed them.
That
Calvert food and
I think that's-
We probably need to clean up that sentence then, because it looks kind of,
I would agree with that. I
Looks
just had to
kinda
read it
clunky.
a couple times.
So we just said the only one.
Yeah, I don't think we have to bring
Yeah,
up the fact that we
just-
were to and now we've been left
Yeah,
alone.
just
We're
get-
just
yeah.
standing alone here in the
We're unique.
Kick off
We're special.
Always unique. This is our county.
it's how we roll.
Yeah, I don't think you said, you don't even think we mentioned Calvert County, we just said McNally County. And yes,
So just, we're left.
the most important thing is that for John, and I assume he knows that now, that John knows that, because his concern and we can address it.
That's pretty thorough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay? Special offense, go, I'm sorry, Jim.
No, that's all right. I just, the first paragraph, last sentence, I just don't know whether disappointed is the right word. I just think it needs to be perhaps a little more stronger and a little bit more direct. I mean, disappointed is almost like, well, you can't control our emotions.
Oh, we're talking the transfer tax, yeah.
Well, let's
Well, where are
take
you
a
at,
word,
Jim?
because that's,
I thought maybe concerned.
Okay.
Deeply
Concerned is better
concerned.
than disappointed.
Okay.
Disappointed sounds like our expectations have just fallen short. We're
Just say is
concerned.
concerned.
Yes.
Concerned.
We can say
Committee is
concerned.
concerned.
Is concerned.
There you go.
Yeah.
I can directly tell the county executive we are also disappointed.
On a personal level.
Well, but it's got to come from Alan first to the council. It's got to start with the county executive and then go to the council.
You can tell him I said I still think Flanagan's wrong.
No, we're not saying that.
You can quote me on that.
Okay. Special event fee.
Yes, it
This is something we didn't vote on, and we had a fair amount of discussion, so I want to make sure we answer the questions in this room to start with, and then we need to get a vote on it. This relates to, and what I gave to the group on Saturday was, got them to the websites, they can look at the overtime cost for police and fire. Just look at that over time. What we also then discussed was amusement tax, because that sort of fits into there, and looking at the amusement tax relative to where it's collected. And you find out that, it's, the movie, at least the numbers I looked at, the movie theaters were the largest, but they were, and Toby's was a couple $100,000. The Merriweather was about, somewhere between 700,000, 900,000, in that range. So what we were looking at, our context was, we got to recover the cost and on that deficit, and there's legislation in play. We're not telling people how to legislate, but we're making a comment that effectively we don't think, without saying it, we don't think that using the amusement tax, which is a general fund revenue, to fund specific things relative to like overtime pay, is the best way to manage needs in the county. That those costs should be recovered where there's a correlation between the cost and the use. And so we're not saying that specifically, but that's what we're sort of saying. You guys need to think about this. We're in a tight budget. We've talked about all this stuff about being stressed on revenue. We've got all these needs, and we're going to take amusement tax and use it to pay for overtime for police. That's the reality of if you use amusement tax for it. So we're saying it to bring it to the table so when we have discussion, people can start looking at that, and the council and the county executive too. At least from this committee. That's, now we can wordsmith the language, but you need to be comfortable with what we're saying, and then the language is something. Yes?
This is really just a thing in that paragraph, the second line, we talk about the county's neglect. That's a little judgmental. Could you say the county not recovering?
How about need?
Makes it less personal.
Rather than neglect. Is that better? So rather in recovery, need to recover.
Need to recover.
We need to recover.
Need to recover.
Are we going to vote on whether or not we want the paragraph in there?
Yeah, we're voting. So let's, yes.
We're in a wordsmithing mood, so let's.
I know,
vote
I feel like I'm back on
let's vote first.
Let's vote on the concept, let's vote on the
Because if
concept.
nobody wants it, then we don't need to wordsmith it.
Yeah.
Do you have, like, I'm angry, do we have examples of special events in other locations and how they? Because just concept, I get it, but
Well, first of all, the legislation for the amusement tax says it goes to the general fund. That's the first thing. That's all we really need to do. That's what the legislation says for the amusement tax. It goes to the general fund.
But what Bruce is asking, are there other jurisdictions that have specific special event fees beyond amusement taxes?
I know there are.
yeah, because I mean, it's one thing to say it, but okay, so every concert in Merriweather's going to have
So
a
you
special
want to add
fee.
a couple?
So the cost of the concert goes up. I mean,
Do you want to add? a
Well,
couple
the cost of let me respond. The cost of, the discussion I had with individuals, not with the group, is that the argument, because we don't want to get into specifics in there, but the argument that Merriweather would make is it makes us less competitive, that we're doing this and that. Here's the reality. This is Steve Sachs, not the committee. Okay? It's not a price-sensitive ticket. Okay? That's not why most of the people that come to that concert are not from Howard County. Okay? So it's not, so if they had to raise their ticket price $1 or $2, it would not be the decision someone would go to Wolf Trap or go to Hershey Park because if they come because of a concert or a time of that concert, date of that concert. That's number one. Secondly, from an economic standpoint, you have to think about most of the people that come to Merriweather for a concert do not go to our restaurants, do not spend money other than at Merriweather. So it generates revenue in terms of employees at Merriweather, but it doesn't, from the economic standpoint, it's not put money back into like other arts, where people are spending ancillary expenditures around it.
But it's not just Merriweather. I mean, there's nonprofits, there's races, there's.
Well, that's, but with that, but in the nonprofits, we've recommended, and I think they are doing a scaled basis on nonprofits. This is specifically, if you look.
Well, let me put it this way, is the focus of what you're saying, not necessarily the committee, on Merriweather, or is it on?
Can I clarify a little bit about the legislation? It's, what's in right now, it's enabling legislation for special events and concerts. So it's a permit fee, and then, so there's an application for the permit, and then there's another component that would be authorized to charge for the event. Special events are the enabling legislation is going in, and the initial fee bill that has been filed already is just for the application. $50 for each special event, $200 for the concerts. The fee schedule that's being proposed will be annual legislation, and it's going to be included with the budget. Special events are going to be proposed to have costs recovered at a threshold. So a nonprofit, and somebody would have a services up to about $1,500, and then nonprofits would pay 50% over that. But this hasn't been, that part hasn't been filed, but the special events would have more of the direct cost. The question really comes on the concert side, and Merriweather and the Inner Arbor Trust and the Chrysalis are the only two venues that really would fall under the concert. And the initial proposal is basically not going to address fees there because of the tax, and that's.
Because of the emissions tax?
Yeah, and that's the first, because the data show that over a 3-year trend, the emission and amusement tax has more than covered the cost incurred at Merriweather. And there's a lot of sentiment on, whether to do it or who will support it and how to get it going, but that's an annual bill that we go through. So I think the question is, here, does this committee want to make a recommendation that everyone should pay a fee, independent of whether someone holding a special event or a concert are obligated to pay an admission and admission tax if their event is using policing gas?
So,
I think
I understand what you're saying, Karen, and this is not the committee's view, what I'd be saying is that the fee, if it's just a fee, should be commensurate with the cost expended by the county beyond, and so if I looked at Merriweather, alcohol control, drug control is something we have to do. They should not be charged for that. That's something we do within our county. But when you're talking about traffic control and all those other additional costs, we don't charge, we charge them all when we do that. We charge churches when we provide.
But they don't benefit.
It's just, this is me personally, it's corporate welfare, and we have so many needs in this county. I have a problem when we do that, regardless of how people feel about it, when we have other needs, I think it's wrong.
I was just trying to explain how we got to what's being filed.
Oh, and I understand, but
And to just clarify that special events and concerts are going to be treated differently in the recommendation for the fee structure, so that the races and the runs that are coming here, who aren't paying admission and amusement tax or aren't paying anything to the county, are going to be recommended to have more fees with consideration for the nonprofits.
So if we start a Howard
It's the
County
concert.
Marathon, the Howard County Marathon would have a fee.
yes.
I have a concern, maybe I'm missing something, but for example, Finger Like Concert Society holds several concerts a year. Sundays at 3 holds concerts. When we use the word concert, it's an all-encompassing term. Does it include these organizations?
There's a definition, and there's a threshold of 2,000 attendees, and fire.
That's what the legislation.
That they don't
What's
need.
this particular thing here? This is something different than that legislation.
I think, well, Steve will have to qualify, but the legislation, the bill is going through with the enabling legislation, because it's outdated, that will enable both concert and special event application fees
And here's the tax, basically. The operative.
The tax legislation is already in place.
But no, I understand, but the operative word in here, relative to our communication to the county, is that the committee does not believe it is the intent of admissions and amusement tax to offset overtime costs associated with events, and recommends the collection of a special event fee or something else. We're not saying how, but we're basically saying, you gotta recover your costs, you gotta include it within that, not so that the general fund is not impacted by this. And since amusement tax was meant to go into the general fund, once you start shifting that to offset that, you're taking away from what the intent of that amusement tax was.
And that's what the committee has to decide,
Yeah.
what recommendation is on it.
Yes.
I was going to say, Bruce, just to clarify your question from however long it was ago, when we originally talked about this, we mentioned Meriwether, but then when we realized that there were more fees that were uncollected beyond just that, we decided not to make it just a Meriwether thing, but
Yeah,
to
we
make
should
it a
make
more
it.
global, because the issue goes beyond just what we're not collecting there. So, just so you have that answer. We had talked about it.
I can tell you, this particular recommendation will not be welcomed by either the council or the county executive. But I think as citizens, that's not our problem. Our problem is what we're looking at in terms of needs in the county and revenue in the county. Yes.
To me, I think it would be hard for them to say this is a special event. It's not, it would not be in the normal course of the duty of a police officer or a firefighter, whether on duty or off duty. And you also have to look at the limited audience. It's not a countywide event or service that's being provided to all the residents of the county. It's a special event. And so to have police officers or firefighters there at no cost to that event, I think you're stretching the county's budget.
Okay, so then, I mean, if we say that anybody with extra events that associated with overtime of that places, so for example, a candlelight concert or Sunday at 3 may not have that impact because it does not require overtime of that county staff. So I think that's what we're talking about. So I think conceptually, I think it's
Which is what we said, we've said over
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned in the EMS fee is that we're the only county that doesn't charge it. I think you'll probably find that we're probably the only county that doesn't charge for this overtime as well for police. I don't know if anyone's looked at that.
Yeah, we'd have to look at other counties that have
I know Anne Arundel,
venues.
you don't, and Annapolis City, you you don't get free police
Maybe we
overtime.
should just put a recommendation to study other counties, what they're doing.
Similar to what we did with the fire or the ambulatory EMS.
For the committee, the one concern that I had is specifically, we're charging other commercial businesses when we use the overtime. We charge them. So you're setting a different set of rules, I just don't, you know,
He's saying the whole-
I'm progressive, but I'm also conservative fiscally, and I just
They get charged
think
for
Brooklyn should be here.
Oh, but it really doesn't matter, it's not more than Meriwether.
No, it doesn't. It's our county, we know what our stresses are. We know what our stresses are in expenditures.
Yeah, no, the more does.
One of the reasons that the special refuge we look at our county is because we weren't charging, we're getting out of county events that come here because they don't get charged.
So, the recommendation we want to vote on
Guys,
is that the committee recommends that the county implement a special event fee.
I'd say that.
Recommend.
We're recommending that they implement a special event fee, that they put one in place. That's
And what it
we're
looks
recommending.
like is up to,
well, I think we're doing it in the sense that it would be rather, yeah, it is to provide relief for the overstream general fund.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand what I would be voting for. I'm voting that the committee is recommending the county implement a special event fee.
That does something, and it connects it to what that fee should do. Yeah.
I get that, I get what we're trying to accomplish with it, but the recommendation is that they implement a special event fee.
Right.
All right, so moved.
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Opposed? Okay, we got two, there, so, we got two opposed.
No, I wasn't opposed. I
No,
was
no,
just.
No, it was you and
Oh,
over there.
I was just slow.
So you were like me on a couple of votes ago, I was like,
Oh, yeah, yes. Okay, so we have two opposed, everyone else in favor. Okay?
But from the language, we need to clean up because there's no recommendation in that language. Right.
It is. It's a,
well, you got that.
the recommendation is there.
It says and recommends a collection of a special event fee.
We should.
Or you don't have to have that.
It's there.
can I just, I'm really confused. Because Craig says we charge them all for overtime. So if what we're talking about is that this is a way to collect for overtime that seems above and, you know, over and above whatever we're doing, we already have a structure in place to charge for overtime. Why does it have to be a fee?
It's
for
not,
that?
Holly is saying, we may do that for them all, but there is no structure that says that we have to do one way or another. It's an ad hoc decision that's, right, effectively, being made throughout the county is who gets charged and who doesn't get charged.
Right, it's MOUs.
Okay. But then we're saying that we're gonna have a fee for events,
Right.
but we're gonna handle them all in another way, and we're gonna handle other things in another way. I just think if what we're talking about is trying to find a way that we effectively reflect what the additional cost over and above normal service delivery is, that
So
people have to be charged.
is what you're saying, let me put it a different way, that overtime cost of fire and police, we recommend that that be recovered,
Yes.
whether it be by a special event fee or direct charge.
Or direct charge, yes. I think that's
a better
better.
way, that's a better way to say it, because I agree, when we say special event, that's gonna get very confusing, because that's really focused on the nonprofit and those
Well,
kinds
and
of
for Meriwether or for anybody, that's not a special event, that's an event, that's doing business, that's
That's
what
right.
they do, period. You know, so we'd say it's special, who designates what's special and what's not? So I think what our issue really is about recovering overtime in a way that makes sense beyond our normal service delivery to make sure that's accounted for. In the same way the police charge for a false alarm after you've
So
had
is that what we
four,
voted
bang.
on? Just want to make sure, is that what we voted on? Are you just changing the language of what we voted on?
She's changing the language.
Ellen,
Yeah,
are you just changing the language of what we voted on? Is that all? Do you still want to keep what we voted on, just changing the language around it?
You don't want to call it special event.
I don't think we should call it special event. We call
Okay,
it
so we don't need to vote again?
No.
All right.
It's a really good point.
You have a meeting
No, I just.
I like saying that you are not going to change what you voted on, I'm just changing what it says.
Steve, we're almost, because page 13 is done.
Okay, well, I'm looking at page 18 and thinking.
Once we get to Dr.
If you want to go through what Richard wrote, we got a lot of comments there.
Okay.
But in further defense of something on Meriwether, they're off the rules now, they're a nonprofit, right? So they're not saying property tax.
No.
So,
Aren't they owned by a nonprofit?
Well, let's not go down there. Let's just move on.
That's beyond what we're here. Oh, you know, okay, we've done enough. Okay. Well, with the bottom of page 8 and page 9. We're in good shape.
Just before we move on, I just want to make a comment that the school system is taking ownership of this. So I don't want the group to feel like we are not taking ownership. We are. And if anybody watched the work session yesterday, that was basically the debate. And the board members have taken great step in having these difficult conversations and making hard choices. We are not there yet, but they are making those difficult conversations count. And they've made some decisions. And I think one of the things we've decided, or the board agreed to do, in order to fix this structural imbalance, was to find savings within our programs for FY19 and put that towards the healthcare benefit fund.
So if we change the last sentence to say the committee is also pleased that HCPSS is taking ownership of the issue and
Yes.
has developed.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is like not being disappointed.
Maybe we should use the word please.
Yes.
Okay.
You want to see that,
Raul's got that.
I just want to make sure that our board members understand. They don't want to see, I don't want them to see these and feel like, wow.
No. That's encouraged.
I think I'd rather be encouraged.
Is encouraged? Okay.
Yeah,
One person at a time.
I agree with Ellen.
Encouraged.
I don't think
That they're moving forward with a multi-year plan, you know, or something.
Okay, so we're going to say is encouraged.
we don't really have any evidence of what's happened yet.
Yeah,
It's not
but we're
public.
encouraged that the
All signs
discussion.
are good.
Also, yeah, we're encouraged that.
But he's on record, because all our meetings are public meetings, so.
Yes, but action hasn't been taken.
Well, some actions were taken last night.
So I want to make sure I have that language down. What is it? I want to, guys, let's move. I want to get the sense of language that changed on the last sentence on the top of page 9 is how we comfortably word it. Okay? Because I'm hearing different things and I want to get it down. From the back bench where those comments were coming.
Are we looking at the very last sentence?
Yeah.
The committee,
If we take out while and we say the committee affirms HCP's new administration for improved blah, 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 the committee is encouraged.
that has taken ownership. I changed it to HCPSS has taken ownership.
They're already at the top of page.
Top of 9.
Top of 9.
This is on the top of page 9, the last sentence,
Committee is
Right above the
encouraged
graph.
right above the graph.
Right.
with the HCPS's move to develop a feasible multi-year plan.
So we're changing that to,
It was just encouraged instead of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's encouraged.
With
And
effort.
Right.
Oh, okay, because they've encouraged, they've taken ownership.
It's taken ownership, yeah, it has taken ownership.
Okay?
Yeah.
And developing a,
Something I'm encouraged to hear that HCBS is taking efforts towards taking ownership, something. We really haven't seen anything made to show the ownership being taken, or as multi-year, we haven't seen a lot of we heard that there's intention to go towards that, which is by itself is encouraging.
Rather than
But we
say,
haven't seen
rather
that
than say
as
here
the-
that, why don't we say learn that?
Learn.
Okay?
Has learned,
Well,
yeah.
say it's encouraged to learn that.
To learn,
and then we go from
okay.
there. Okay?
But if you go back to page 8 where we say the superintendent's request, since he hasn't officially made the request yet, do we need to change that language at all, do you think? Or is it-
Yes,
No,
because
that's
we've
it.
not made a request to the, is the superintendent's request to the board.
Yeah, his only thing now is a request.
Is the
And
request
that's
to
the
the
only
board.
thing on the table. We don't
Yeah.
have a board request yet.
Yeah.
Right, but you're
You only
voting-
have the superintendent's current
Right,
request.
that's what I'm saying.
The
Yeah.
the budget is being voted today, right?
No, on Monday.
On Monday.
Yeah.
So this could all be updated on
Yes.
Monday with the dollar values that are
For the
actually
board.
voted, and it could be the board's.
That would be
approved
better
budget.
if we could, because it would be, you don't want to have mixed numbers out there. So if you're going to vote on Monday, I would say we plug in the board's request with whatever those
If the
numbers are on
committee is,
Monday.
if the committee is okay with that, we'll do that, but at 3 o'clock, we've got to get a report that the county
The
executive.
board doesn't vote till the evening, right?
Right, so don't forget.
I
Can we just
just,
put draft? Can we just put the word draft?
Keep changing this.
No, I think you can stick with what you have now because you referenced the superintendent's request. And I think that's it.
That's clear enough.
Right,
Yes.
right now, this is where we are.
that deals with enough of what we're talking about.
Yes, but this equally addresses Hallie's concern when she said, we've learned or because we've not made a formal request to you, to the county yet. So you have to take whatever we're saying for it. So however we word that, is fine, but
Let's leave it where it
Yeah.
is.
Leave it where it is.
It covers our intent of what we're doing anyway. I think the MOE was, we just referred our recommendations back to what we've done in the one before rather than trying to.
I would like to add HCPSS MOE in there simply because otherwise people, until they read it, don't understand where this.
So you want to say maintenance of HPS,
Or maintenance of,
HCPS.
yeah. Somehow make it clear that this is something that applies to the school system and it follows it, but if people just see MOE, they don't know
Okay.
what that means.
Got
So
it.
let's make it clear.
So that should follow then up in the summary of recommendations too, under F.
Yeah.
Throw the
Yes,
HCPSS in front of that as well too.
right, because I think it helps with the language.
Okay? Page 10.
Steve, just going back to my comments in the very beginning, this section under revenue expenditure multi-year projections, we talk about this gap and what this gap could be in the future. Again, I think we just need to kind of caveat this a little bit. And, you know, one of the things that I was suggesting, if you go into the third line up from the bottom, but following these projections, they're just suggesting that in addition, uncertainties in the future federal, state, and local economic conditions and economic events that constrain revenue growth projections could cause this gap to be much more pronounced. I just think we need to be pretty specific that these are projections, and there could be changes, you know, that really constrain this growth into the future.
There's a couple of things, because I was looking at this, because you say, is this a structural deficit? But part of it is when you have multi-year planning, people aren't as constrained in what they ask for. There's, in the out years and going so that, I wouldn't want, when we talk about this, I wouldn't want everyone to think, well, we're gonna have 100 million. Because this is just planning. What it tells us is where things are heading and we need to be concerned, not that we're gonna have a $100 million gap in that. So I want to be careful in, you know, we can put the language in, there's a lot of uncertainties, but I also understand that when you do multi-year planning, there's a J curve somewhere out there. Okay, we want to do it because it's a great message that unless we look at things closely, this is where we could be heading, because even if it was half of that, it'd be pretty significant.
Right, but if the revenue projections are half of what they are in this, it could be twice that. So I mean,
Yes, no.
it's an issue of magnitude.
You have that language written down.
If you give us
Yep, just pass it back this way. Just give me your stack when you're done.
You got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay? We're done on page 10. Page 11.
This is gonna sound, but I think we talked about this before. Is there a reason for the decimal points in the charts? When nothing's going over this, these are all whole numbers?
You did this, you did. I don't know, it's because we
I'm
can't
just
deal with
noting,
it.
there doesn't seem to be any
So
reason
my
to have them there.
Okay.
My question to Raul, can you deal with that? Can
Yep.
you get into the charts and fix
That's
that?
easy.
Yeah, that's easy.
That's,
Okay.
I think it's just something we forgot.
Yeah,
Quick chart.
all the other stuff.
Yes, Christina?
Charts are lovely. Would it be possible to also put tables so that people can see the actual numbers as opposed to just using something?
My own view is when I used to report up to senior management, they like graphical things, graphs versus when you get the numbers and glaze.
I mean, so I'm just saying as an addition, not instead of.
That's,
So for the multi-year projection, because this really for trend illustration, the numbers, I don't have too much for 5 years from now, whether that number is going to be accurate. The long-term is more to review based on reasonable assumptions from all states where we're likely to be, always going to change. It's more to review the drivers and the general trend and to figure out and be aware of that, what's coming down the road, rather than be accurate. So I'm not sure whether.
well, the second graph shows which buckets they're in a sense. The second graph is pictorially showing where those drivers are. And that's where,
On page 14, the pie chart, everything else doesn't have a percentage.
Yeah.
let's get there, wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Hold that thought. Okay. And that's okay. Any other changes on 11? Okay. Now, just so you know, when we get to 12 and 13, we're in the Dr. Clinch's world. So we did not wordsmith anything we did Dr. Clinch, except he was, I learned on Saturday that he went to the Stanford School of Public Policy this week, so I don't question that.
I don't know what
Yeah.
you said, but the actual numbers are on paper.
Yeah, within.
The last thing, the whole document.
That's how the trend starts.
That gets to, Christina, that would get to your,
So to say you didn't want to have them in there, they're already in there.
they're in there.
They're already in
Well, they're Dr. Clinch's.
They're in his, but they're not yours.
They're in the back.
Okay. Any other? Well, I'm not going to go through Dr. Clinch's.
Yeah.
Should probably be sure.
Yeah,
Great.
thousands. Yes, that's it. That's a great.
By the way,
There's a duplicated bullet point.
Let me see if I can.
Duplicated
That doesn't require
Okay.
to be in a-
That's the same one as this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, here's Dr. Clinch.
There's a bullet point in Dr. Clinch's piece that's repeated, so we're just advising you get rid of one.
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yep.
It's already there.
Guys, thank you all. You will get an revised copy of this later today. If you have further comments on that, I'll is the person of receipt. And thank you all very, very much. It was a great session. Appreciate it. Have a great day. And last thing, when you get this report, any circles of influence that you have, groups that you're in, like I'm in Rotarian. I did this report last year for our Rotary Club. We're going to do it, I didn't put it in our list, but we're going to do it for all 5 this year. The more that we can get this out, and if you're not comfortable with being on the fire line, we'll put 3 or 4 people that in front of you, of people, that so we can, again, have more discussions and listening and giving information. Yes.
What's the window of time that we,
What I think about it.
no, I'm just saying, like, how long do we go out and still cover this report? if we're in May, are we too late? Or?
No, I think it could go, I think further than that, because for example, dealing with things, AFO's going to, which is a big piece of really, I think, decent discussion to have, but these things are going to be out there throughout the year. It's hard, I'm looking at what we did this year, lining up these meetings becomes a little problematic with organizations that have already planned out.
Right.
You know, so I think if we go through I think beyond June.
Okay, but you sounded effective in May.
Yeah.
In April, clearly.
Yeah,
Around budget time.
Which says,
Right,
and the
that's the
reason
hook.
for this will be in the paper,
Cycle.
this will be in the flyer and whatever in the week, in the Business Monthly, and you'll have a headline different than what's in the content, and people will look at it, but they don't read it. When we went before Howard County Concerned Citizens, and they were going to give me 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and I got Stuart, first of all, I said, how many people, your people read the report? And I got him to send the report out. So we sent it out in a piece. So we're doing two things, trying to get people, we've constructed this to make it easier to read, to get people to read it, but then with all the misconceptions, that's good because it allows them to do it. And when I'm responding, we give information and say you really need to read the report. It's an easy report to read. If you just go through the executive summary, the information, intent, and then whatever recommendations you want to go to, this is a fairly easy, it's 12 pages.
Hey, Steve, when will it be available online on the website? Because a lot of times, like with social media, it's great to just, I'll put out a blast that says, hey, it's out here, here's the link.
Well, I would say two
Go
things. Here's what I would say. While we get it approved by, until it's released to the press, which will be next Thursday, at that point, we'll get it on the website. I would suggest to all of you, since it's not a lot of bytes to put it in, the more that you can attach it and send it out versus sending people to find it, you're better. Because
If the link is included in the press
they can
release,
forward it on.
Yeah.
that's the best.
All right, well, Steve, just let us know, I guess it would be good to let us as a committee know when we can attach it if we want to go that route, and when it's posted so we can link
You
it.
can attach it next Thursday, the 1st, if we have the call in the morning, I mean, the meeting in the morning, and then by 11 o'clock.
But I would strongly suggest you get it out online for it to be linked, because attaching it to a Twitter account, not so easy.
Oh, I don't do Twitter, so I wouldn't.
You
and the president.
You could go to the exact.
Yeah, dude, you gotta do the social media, man.
So,
21st century, yo.
I just want to thank you for your leadership. There's a lot of diverse ideas and opinions around the table, to be able to hone them all into a document that reads as well as this. I want to thank you and the rest of the group that met over the weekend to pull all of those ideas and thoughts together. So it was a nice job.
Something you may want to do.